You got it.
Hey, so I'm here today with Tony Zabel. Uh, Tony, why don't you start off by telling us how you doing today, first of all?
Good, a little tired, but fantastic.
Awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you grew up at, a little about the neighborhood, a little about that type of thing.
That may take more time than we have, but grew up on the Lower East Side, first on Fifth and Holland, then we made it up to Sixth and Wallace. That was our big move back then. Great neighborhood growing up, a lot of outdoor basketball. Third Street, Rocket Ship Park, Kingtown, Second and Wallace. So a lot of good basketball, a lot of good athletes. I'm a St. Patrick's guy. A lot of good athletes were at St. Pat's before that school closed, and eventually found my way to prep, and then after that Tech Memorial, and we had some good things that occurred with those group of guys that we had at Tech, and eventually worked my way through college and ended up starting 4 years at Gannon, and then I got lucky. I got a couple games in with the FOP too, with the Shriners game when I was
Okay.
like 30, 31. Those ones are probably the hardest, believe it or not, to recover from. But that finally ended the career at that point.
Right, right. So let's talk about just your youth years, man. First, how did you get into what sports did you play growing up? Did you play like any organized leagues or anything like that? Or
The I think the parochial cutoff was like 130 or 150, whatever it was. I didn't make it at the time. And I think we had combined with St. Andrews at some point. So I was able to play basketball and I was able to play soccer, but I couldn't play the parochial football with the cutoffs. So I didn't play, we played pickup like at the Soldier Sailors Home and Turkey Bowl. We do all that type of stuff in our neighborhood. But as far as any organized football, that didn't come until I went to high school. But soccer, basketball, a lot of pickup stuff. Everybody in the Lower East Side thought they're the next Joe Namath or whatever.
right.
And my basketball nickname was Lambeer.
Okay.
Obviously, all the guys is down on Third Street and Second Wall to call me Lambeer, but I took it in stride. So we had some good competition.
So you attended prep for a little while?
Yeah, I went to prep, and my father passed away my freshman year, and it was ironic when I was at prep, my hair was like down to here, and I got in trouble. And then when I got to Tech, my hair was like this, and I guess I blended in. So I ended up there my sophomore year, and that's right after the first year that Tech Central could have freshmen again. So they had a good young nucleus. In fact, one of the freshmen that was my year, Alicia Font, started as a freshman, and they created a core group of 7, 8, 9 sophomores that started on a kind of a bad team, even though there are some good football players there. And then that junior year, there's probably only 4 or 5 seniors. Rodney Evans, Soup was a pretty good football player. Herman Gamble, Daryl's uncle, one of the Wolf brothers, Dumbo, but there wasn't that big core group of seniors. And then
Right,
by the
right.
time we became that group, and we went away to camp, and our camp story could be like a whole nother episode, but we really bonded. We ate well, we conditioned hard, we fought hard, and that team came together, a strong core senior group. And then we had some great young guys on our team, like Percio's group was a little bit behind me. Sean Madura's group, with Dietrich and Tony Akins and Kevin Harper, a lot of future good college players.
Right.
So we had a great camp, and then we went on the road to I think they were fourth or fifth, Akron, St. Vincent, St. Mary's. And it was so hot, man, and we thought we were in great shape. And usually guys try to get into the game, right?
Right.
We were trying to push each other out of the game. Like, Percy, you go in. No, Coach, you go in. Because, you play special teams, you play both ways,
Right.
and you get worn out. And we end up beating them, I think, 17-7. And we had 8 or 9 kids with concussions and dehydration. And some of us were walking around the parking lot not knowing where we were. So we were I think we spent that night in Akron. And then next week we had Youngstown South. And then as we started winning these games, and you don't think about it till you haven't lost one. Then like, oh my God, then it gets kind of serious.
Right, right.
We had Ronnie Costello was there. That was his last year, and Jimmy Martinella Lights was there. Jeff Shaw, TT, a lot of coaches that you would have had later on.
Right,
But
right.
and then we were undefeated till we hit that prep game. We blew out McDowell the week before. Um, beat a very good Vincent team who had some good players on there.
What years
And
we
then
talking about, Tony? What years we talking?
88, 88.
This was 88?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the last game was Sharon, who was very good, and we ended up beating them too. So I think we're like sixth or seventh in Quad A, and that was the first year they went to the new playoff system,
Okay.
which benefited you guys later on because you could play the whole state.
Right, right, right.
There it was like you won District 10, and that's good. That's okay.
Right, right,
Well,
right.
I think we had a pretty good run, no complaints.
Hmm. What do you remember about Coach Costello?
Well, I didn't have enough money. I think the insurance back then was like $20, right? Whatever it was. And I think it was Castro who had the little I think there was a red barn there and they made it into like an insurance office. He sent me over with the note and didn't give me no money or a check or none. But the next thing I know, I had an insurance card. I think it was like $25, and I could come back and practice the next day.
Okay.
And that was like one of my first memories of cause. And then when I had them, because when I left from prep, I had a lot of classes ahead of the other guys. And there used to be that deli across the street, Sherry's. Do you remember Sherry's Deli?
I don't remember that.
It was right next to the fruit basket place. They did like
Okay.
subs and stuff. He
Yeah.
sent me a hall pass to go get some subs. And the other best thing about Cause is he was so grassroots. He had that big Xavier ring. And once in a while, they tell the story how he beat out Fran Tarkenton, and he would always incorporate that sports into the lesson, like the Oklahoma Sooners. Well, the sooner you got there, the more land you got. The North Carolina Tar Heels. Well, the tar mud up there was so bad, and they leave their footprints in there, and that's how the Union caught them. He'd always have some sort of icebreaker with the schools, and Mars was the same way. Jimmy Marnella, even though he went to prep and had a lot of success in basketball, as far as a pure coach and a pure teacher and a pure educator, both those guys are in their own level there.
Right. What are your thoughts about how the Metro League was back then? What was the competition like between the teams?
I think the parity was certainly there. As far as like Academy had some good athletes. East had some good athletes. Vincent was competitive in a lot of different years. McDowell every so often would have a very good team. Then of course you had prep with their consistency. And that's why when we got in the Save and I game, that group bonded pretty good. We had a pretty good group. A lot of Division I, Division II players. And I think what people would say, like, let's take this team on the road. Those schools that beat you when you're at East or at Tech or at Vincent, because like our Tech team, we thought we were maybe one or two linemen, one or two of these, and maybe one of these guys away from being that special team.
Right, right.
And you kind of saw that on the Save and I game because everybody was, a capable individual and can do certain things. But I think that those are the experiences and things that you get out of that.
Right. I know you said you guys talking about camp would be like another episode, but you got any good camp stories you can share? Anything?
We went to a place that's kind of out past Meadville, maybe more like Cochranton, and it was called Custer Town, old Boy Scout camp. And they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't bring bedding. Don't bring pillows. Don't we got all that, right?" And everybody slept in a big open area with a big fireplace. If we're having like a keg party or something, it probably would have been perfect. But we get there and there's no mattresses. It's all wrought iron bunk beds, right?
Yeah.
And we had nothing to put down except remember the old big bags, the equipment bags,
right?
The duffel bags. That's all we had. So when you wake up, you'd have that wrought iron imprinted into you. And then we go for the morning jog, and then we'd have our first practice. And one thing about it, they brought in this guy, Big Ed, and I think he was from Sharon or Farrell, and he cooked all of our meals. He fed us great. Then afterwards, we'd go in that big room with the fireplace and watch film, and talk about bonding and camaraderie. It was very, very, very special. A lot of good stories from there, which I'll share with you maybe in person, but it was a truly, you want to talk about remember the Titans. How about remember the Centaurs? You know what I mean?
Right, 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 right.
And we came out of that camp, man. We were ready to go. Whatever they did to trick us, and I know Lights told some stories about that at Fairview, or how they psychologically
Getting
did
your head.
whatever they did to us. Um, they achieved the goals, and we came out of it for that Akron game, like I told you, and we were ready to rock and roll, man. We had Bruce Keys at quarterback. God bless his soul. He'd fall forward to get you 2-3 yards. 6'5", 6'6". Daryl Gamble was an all-city player and a very good athlete. I still say Sam Carroll was one of the hardest hitters I've ever met.
Mhm.
Mike Anderson at linebacker, Alicia Fun at safety, Mark Odin Blue Moon was at the other one, Percio at the one end, me and Cooge, Johnny Nolan, Bobby Berger. We had a lot of good football players.
Right.
And I would never put down my college experience, but when you take guys like Rodney Evans and Herman Gamble and Mark Knight from the year before, and Mike Clark and Rick Miller, and then the guys from my group, by the time I got to college, this part was almost anticlimactic, if you can realize it. Maybe with your team, you saw that,
Right.
where like some of these dudes you run into in high school are just on another, like Sean Madura, guys like that. And then you get to college, like, oh, that's it. Because I think those tech teams both are competition,
You
right?
play with some great players, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you play teams like Youngstown South, Cleveland St. Ed's, and then this is my senior year, you beat those guys, and then you go to a Division 2 or 3 program. It's almost anticlimactic, and I think that's why those programs lose those kids. They're good Division 2 or 3, maybe even scholarship players, but the high school experience was so great that the college experience is anticlimactic
It
for
goes
them.
down a little bit. You feel like it goes down a
Yeah,
little.
and they're not with their buddies, and maybe the competition. And then Coach Herman used to have it. Hey, where's Joey? I-79. Where's Frankowski? I-90.
Right,
They
right,
went back to wherever they came from. But I felt that those teams at Tech were on a pretty high level
right,
compared to
right,
others. So,
right,
not to take away from anybody else, but I feel pretty strong about that conviction.
right. What do you remember about being a student at Tech? What was it like back then in the 80s?
Oh my God. I thought it was fantastic because he took a shop. So half a day I was in data processing, which is, computers.
Uh-huh.
And at that time it was in lieu with the technology nowadays, God only knows. And then I had 3 or 4 regular classes because I was still ahead from being at prep.
Right,
And I thought it was a great experience. We had a nice lunch. Um, the ladies were very generous to the football players. You got that extra slice of pizza or
right,
whatever.
right, right.
And then if you're on a varsity letterman or athlete, you didn't have to take a gym during the season. So I
Right,
go down with Mr. Casella, Mr. Gorley, get the hot tub, go work out a little bit. And I think my high school experience was as good as it could be.
right,
I was in a good shop, good technology, good teachers, a lot of good people. I can't say enough about my experience at Tech.
right, right, right.
And
So,
I'd go to say, if somebody said they had a bad one in the same time frame, I'd compel them to tell me why.
right,
And you got your hair cut up there, you go to cosmetology, you got to get your car fixed, bring it over to auto body, they're building something. And so it was a really cross section, not only of Erie, but a
uh,
lot of those technologies and a lot of those shops. So you could have a really good experience coming out of there.
right, right. I know you from those Tech teams. Who were some of the people that you felt were like? I mean, just like I know you have all the guys were good players, but special athletes like man.
I'll use the acronym Mr. MFer, which you'd hear in college and you hear this in Atlanta, where they want to pick one or two guys to be that Mr. MFer guy. You know, the guy like at a Florida State, he's your banshee, he's your killer, he's your cyclone.
Right.
And I think like Rodney Evans was one of those guys, right? And Super Rod's doing very good right now, but pound for pound, he was as hard of a hitter as you're going to find. Same
Right.
with Herman Gamble. And like Bruce Keys, you got to realize Bruce is probably what 6'5", 6'6", 240, 250, and could run laterally. He was a smacker. Again, Sam Carroll, you know, I've seen him knock a couple guys out of games. Broke Kerry Goodwin's collarbone, you know, broke this guy's this, you know. Sean Percival was a hitter. You know, there was just so Lee Chiffon, you know, just so many guys. And I don't know, it's because they played early and they took their lumps early on, which I
Right.
think that's part of it too, right?
Mhm.
You get beat up as a freshman and sophomore because back then, if they played Cleveland St. Ed's on Friday, you might get in the game. You might
Right.
play a
Right.
lot,
Right.
especially if it's a blowout. And then Saturday morning, you got to play JVs against Vincent or Academy or something.
Mhm.
And you know, no one was keeping track of anything back then,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Do whatever. Right.
Yeah, you might, you know, what's there like 40 quarters in a season, you might have played 60 or 70 in ninth, 10th grade.
Right.
So I think that was as much of a factor of bringing those guys up a level in that out of town competition. You play Youngstown South, you play the St. Ed's, Kearney was one of them, Titusville was another one. Sharon definitely was one that plays
Right.
above
All the
himself.
great teams. Right.
You know, just like Aliquippa and Farrell always did that.
Mhm.
And I think you take some lumps early on, but then you're going to figure out real quickly, I got to get stronger, I got to get faster, maybe I got to get a little tougher.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. Yes, we got put in tough situations early on, but I think you certainly saw the results by 87, 88 when we ran the whole gambit except the lost the prep.
Right. Right. Right.
And that prep team had those guys at every position. I don't know if they had 7, 8, 9 kids that went Division I out of that team. You know, like Keverly, Pat Odd, Eric Lewandowski, Dean
Mhm.
Height. You know, I can go Chris Krahowski. I can go on and on, right? And I think that's where those were the guys we were missing to get to that next level, right?
So if you guys could have like had some of them guys that they had
They
combined with
would
what
have
you
given,
already
they would
had.
have given, yeah, they would have given us a couple of the skis, you know, Lewandowski or Shanowski, a couple of the skis
Right.
that would have made a difference. But you know what? Then they ran into that North Hills team, you know,
Mhm.
and or whoever they end up losing to in the playoffs. And then and like you guys, as good as you guys got, you ran into the Brandon Shorts and the Var Arrington guys,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
You know, so there's always another notch up, you know,
Right.
and then you look back on some of the teams you're on. All right, what were you guys missing? You know, was it a guy here or a guy there, or just a bad call at one time, and here you are, right?
Right. Right. Right.
But it is what it is.
So you anything you wish you'd done differently about your football career or anything like that?
Yeah. Ironically, after I had left prep, Catholic Charities called because my sister was at Villa and I'm going east. That if we wanted to stay at the Catholic high schools, there was money available for us. And by that time, she was into different things, and she was working and made friends over at East, where you know it's our neighborhood,
Right.
and Wayne and those schools over there. And I was doing well at Tech, and I was competing and growing and getting stronger. And like, well, we're already here. But I think if I would have been in with that group at prep, you would have been lifting more. You know, a lot of our guys thought they'd play themselves into shape. I think the prep kids, game one, were ready to play maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, a little bit more prepared.
I think academics, I was so far ahead of the game when I left prep that I only took 3 classes besides my shop to graduate from the school district.
Mhm.
So, you know, at the calc, the trigs, the APs, the honors, you know, I remember guys like Jim Toohey, good friend of mine, Shanowski, Satursky, they had like 4.8 and 5.2 GPAs. And I couldn't figure that out because they're taking an AP class worth 7. They're
Right.
going to get an A. They take an honors class worth 6. You know, I got like a 3.3, 3.4. I think I'm respectable.
Right.
But you know, I think you would lose that. And I think also too, if you had a kid that was a good starter at a school like prep and had the academics of the prep school background, then you're going to see a Colgate come get him, or like a Villanova come get him.
Right, right,
Those type of schools, or maybe they're not a Pitt, Penn State guy, which some of those guys were. But I think they knew from that prep school background
right.
that they had a lot of those abilities to be successful without having to take a year or two. And I think, I'll explain this to you this way. Remember Coach Rizicki at Gannon?
Yes.
So they had some JUCO problems, and much as about JUCO as anybody. And he goes, "You want to go 1-1-1-2-2, or you want to go 2-2-2-1-1?" And I said, "What are you talking about, Deuce?" We used to call him Deuce Deuce. He goes, "If you can get a kid that's 6'3", 6'4", from a decent program and a decent family, he may not be 270, he may not be 290, he may be a quarterback, he may be a tight end, but you got him for those years, right?
Right.
Then that fourth or fifth year, then COVID, whatever, they're in your program, they become leaders, they're good kids, they know the ropes, or you get a lot of the one-hit wonders, and you can go 2-2, and then they're going 1-1-1. See how that mindset was?"
Right.
And he goes, "That's in the PSAC. You almost have to make that decision because, like, look at California. They'll
Mhm.
bring in all these one-hit wonders, and they'll have these great teams, and then they're gone. The culture is not right. The process, the program, and I think what Coach Rizicki wanted to do again and was go to that, maybe 1-1-2-2, 1-2-2-1, more balance, more long-term commitment,
Right.
and that's what Coach is doing there now too, and he's doing a great job. But I think that's what you see happening at a lot of these programs.
Right. Right. Talk about your college career a little bit. How did you
Oh
get
well,
in?
yeah. I got banged up. I went to go to Edinburgh. Coach DeMeo, who runs a great Facebook page, if you ever see him, how he taught the wing tee into the double spread, that type of
Right.
concept. And my mother made him dinner, and he goes, "Well, if you get out of the pie chart," he goes, "if you come to Mercer, it'll be about $300 a year." I'm like, "Okay." And I got banged up a lot. And then Gannon started the team that following spring.
Right.
And Herman had this old office across from the courthouse, and it was snowing real bad. I didn't want to wait no more. I'm like, "Who's this guy? I'm out of here." And then there's that big picture window. I think it's stained glass there by that old chapel. And he sees me walking. He sees my size. He comes jogging at me. "Hold on, come back, come back." And that's where we started the bonding process. But we literally started everything from scratch.
Mm.
Leitner was there, and a couple other guys. But like, all right, how do we do this? Where do we go for that? And then on top of that, that stadium was still bungalows and cottages down there, where that field is.
Right.
People had houses there. So we'd have to bus up to St. Mark's every day, and you didn't get that nap in between. You're always rushed. And then eventually, that second year, we won 6, 7 games. Some more kids started coming in. But talk about being pioneers or trendsetters. And nowadays, talk about full circle, Mo. We had our spring get together. And as you know, a lot of the colleges with the footballs, they don't go to homecoming because a lot of them coach or doing stuff.
Right.
That spring game, like at Temple, at Pitt,
Mhm.
Gannon, those are becoming where everybody gets together. That's
Oh,
like
okay.
our get together.
Right. Right.
So this year, we had the spring game. We had a nice get together on Friday night, and what Mark Gator did is he took all the old programs from all the years and make like a big collage and like
Right.
for pictures. And then we had the game and a nice barbecue because that rec center is beautiful now, right? And then the last part was we all went to Sullivan's afterwards. We had like a little private party. We had 50 some guys.
Wow.
2 or 3 guys from 2007, 2 or 3 guys from '99, and like Jansen Jones was there, Tyler Batts was there, just a really good group of blended guys.
Right.
And once that group came together, it didn't matter if you're 24, 34, or 44. Like, what year were you? Guys were wearing their Letterman's jackets,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
and guys were bringing out old scrapbooks, and it was a really, really special time. And I think next year, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 60, 65, 70 guys.
Right. Right.
And it goes to show when you create a legacy and you create something and guys put a lot into it, they want to come back. I
Right.
think the only guys that don't come back are either the cancers of the team or the guys that really didn't play. And that's sad but it's also the reality of our sport.
Right.
Because our sport isn't for everybody, and that's why I even tell my son it's the sport of kings. And he did very well here in Atlanta at a nice 6-8 program. But I think people that don't realize I may not be in your fraternity, you might not be in my fraternity, but we're in our fraternity.
Right. Right.
And to me, that's the beauty of football, both in Erie, Western Pennsylvania for sure,
Mhm.
nationwide. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Right. So when you look back at your football career, what are you most proud of about when you look back at it all?
It's funny. I think starting the program was big, because there's only maybe 15 of us. I got the picture here where we saw it through to the end. Out of all those guys that come in and going. And like Herman said, 79, 90. And then once in a while, round 11, Youngstown, joking. And I think staying with the program and then being a part of it, even till this day, I talked to the coach. We have these get togethers. I got an award from the PSAC a couple of years ago for contribution to your athletic team post graduation. I think they gave one to each university, and to me that's bigger than winning the lottery, because that's helping a lot of kids for the right reasons, for a lot of like I said, for the right reasons. So
Right. Right.
that's big. And I think too, we played some schools like out of the way, like we played Dayton, we played Iona, we played W&J, we played Buffalo. It seems like when the games were already blown out, it seems like where it's already the day's done. We got our class, we got our muscle, we got whatever. It seemed like those were my best games.
Mhm.
And maybe it's like that it doesn't matter attitude, like the ship's going down, keep fighting. And
Right.
years later, I ran into Judge Braybender, who's an attorney at the time. They were at Scully's, and he goes, "Guy, I ran into the head coach from Dayton. I can't remember his name now, Jerry something." He goes, "He wanted to know who's that 77 from that 77 from Gannon." "Oh, that's Tony Sabo. He just got hired as a PO or whatever." He goes, "Tell that kid he can play for me anytime." And when you hear something like that from somebody like that, from somebody like that,
Mhm.
that makes it all worthwhile, because
Right.
those are good people making legitimate observations for you when you thought that was the worst day of your life.
Right. Right. Right.
Date you go down to Dayton, they got the couches on fire, they got bands going. They beat us 50-0, and the coach tells the judge a few years later, "Wow, I wish I had another kid like that on my team." To
Right.
me, those are the best pieces.
Right. 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 So some of your old Tech teammates are going to watch this probably and see it. Anything you want to say to them before we wrap up? Anything to those guys?
So absolutely. I think Facebook has made the Centaurs stronger than ever. I think your group then took that even to more heights and more levels, and you guys should be proud of that. But for what Tech represented with the city, the unity, uh, you know, we didn't have Gatorade back then. We didn't have fancy water. Cos knew the lady across the street. They ran it through the fence into a little trough, and that was your water.
Right.
And we
Right.
were okay with that. And you see a lot of people. We're all in our 50s now, and a lot of people doing great things. And where I can walk away and go to Marietta, Georgia, or Toronto, Canada, or New York City, and let me tell you about my Tech team. Yep. And like I said earlier, we remember the Titans, we remember the Centaurs, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
was very proud and honored to be with those guys, and they accepted me, and I think we accomplished a lot of good things together, and I'm very proud to say that with them.
Right. Right. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up here today, Tony?
No, no, I just I could you asked that question about the Metro League.
Yeah.
It seemed like that competition was so intense and so fun. And like, where did all those kids go? Did everybody like move out to the county, or
Right.
but that happened in Pittsburgh, you go to Niagara Falls. Um, I was talking to John DeBello, who comes from a family of some good athletes,
Right.
and we were talking about like parochial schools. And I think, I don't know how long we were talking, but we named like 25 or 30 parochial schools
Uh-huh.
that have closed in the city of Erie, like
Right.
St. John, St. Pat, St. Casimir, St. One, St. Mary, St. Joseph,
Right.
St. Paul. And like, that was such a great competition, and half those kids would go to prep, half would go to city schools, and it was just a great education for a lot of kids. It put you in such a great position for high school. Not that there's anything wrong with Wayne or Roosevelt or any of those schools, but um, that the times have changed. Even the way the game is played, the spread formations and fullbacks are almost non-existent.
Right.
Tight ends are now your best athlete. It's
Right.
things
Right.
have changed. But also, I think the core has stayed the same. Stay low over your feet, keep your outside shoulder free. You start with those fundamentals, and you're going to play football.
Right. 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 What did it take to be a great player on those eighties high school
Um,
teams? What do you think are some attributes that it took?
It's weird because the lifting, some guys lifted, but it wasn't as big of a deal.
Mhm.
But like I would play a lot of basketball, and I played basketball with some of the Gannon guys that almost won the national championship. I played basketball with a lot of the football guys, a lot of the neighborhood guys, a lot of the neighborhood tough guys. And I think anything you do where you're going to get respect, because you got to have respect,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes that respect hurts a lot, like in your swelled eye, your busted lip. But what you do after that, and here's the best example. When I was a sophomore from Tech, Coach Leitner was convinced I could not stay low. So he matched me up with Mike Clark, who was a grown man, all city tackle. Kept driving me down the field as I kept standing up, kept standing
Right.
up. So then he brought over Avis Anderson, who's one of the toughest, hardest hitting people I've ever met. 9.9 out of 10. Puts Avis next to me. Now they're doing a 2-on-1. And then he did a third guy, I think is either Rick Miller, who was an all state guy, and or Mike Wolf, who's a city cop, who's a very good football player. It was like a 3-on-1. So finally, I dropped to my knee. I split the double team. I stayed low and I locked out. Leitner started screaming and yelling. I can't breathe. I remember the mesh jerseys,
Oh yeah.
and
Mhm.
they get it printed onto your skin. I got home. My mother's like, "You're black and blue and this and that." And I was like, I was so proud of myself. She goes, "You can't go back there. They're going to kill you." I said, "No, it's really good. It's going good. I think we're making progress.
Right. Right.
And because if I didn't go back there and I saw those guys in the hallway, they would just laugh at me.
Right.
Plus, I want to go back.
Right.
And that's the thing that people don't get. They beat me bad. I learned, I got better, I got stronger, I got smarter. I listened to the coaching. I dropped to the knee, I fought through the double team. And those are the things that they ingrained in you. And that's that sophomore group I keep talking about.
Right.
And if any of those guys are listening to this, that's what made us who we are. And running the 330s, and it get to the point where some of the linemen were running with the backs on the 330s.
Wow.
And now I'm like, oh, I guess I got to go too, right?
Right. Right.
And every year, and I'll leave you with this: every single year, something would happen at like that last one or two practices before the first game, and they would leave the team. They quit.
Right.
They're the same thing every year.
Mhm.
If Mars or Lights are watching, admit to it. And then like the one year Mark Knight took over with his guys and finished the team and ran plays in condition. And they're over at the Chestnut Pub watching, smoking some Newports,
Right.
watching it. And then I think Rodney Evans and Herman Gamble did it that year. And then our group did it that year. And then finally I realized they do that every year,
Right.
and they left the team to us. We finished practice, we conditioned, and they usually did that the week before the first game. And it was kind of like a unique, unheralded Tech tradition that we figured out finally.
Right.
And then another one of talk about Lego blocks and building blocks. That was certainly one of them. And I think too, players today would not absorb what players in our generation did. The smoking on the field, the smacking of the helmet, the grabbing of the jersey.
Right.
I think a lot of that nowadays isn't as tolerated as it was with our group of people. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
I think you probably agree on that one.
Oh yeah.
Time,
Things
those
have
times have
definitely
changed.
changed, man. What you can do and what you can't. So.
Yeah. But the last part of that, when I played with the Milk Creek guys in that FOP police game, those guys were so easy to coach because as SWAT guys or as cops or whatever, they were so disciplined
Right.
and so on point to start with. Where I need you here, I need you to fight this way when you see the guy coming, and then hold your ground and make a play. Okay,
Right.
got it. Thank you. You know, and
Right.
because they already had that mindset. You
Mhm.
get a bunch of young yahoos, you know, 18, not 18, 13, what, 14, 15, 16. I think it takes a little bit more than that. But those are all the good memories. And to answer your question, those are the things that make us who we are today. And I can test to myself and to my tech brothers, my fellow centaurs, half man, half horse, whatever we are, you know. Um, I'm very proud of them, and I was honored to be a part of their teams.
Well, Tony, man, hey, thanks for being here today. This is Tony Zabel, Tech Centaurs forever, right?
And I talk about, you really got to have a good memory because we it doesn't exist.
Right, right.
But we'll still claim. Well, I'm still part of that legacy. You're part of that legacy. The Fred Belindikoff, all city, all state, all pro. That's still part of who we are. He's a Fourth and Wallace guy. So we are who we are, and that will never change.
Right. Hey, thanks, Tony. I appreciate your time today, man, and wish you the best.
All right, it's an honor to sit down with you, and I look forward to seeing you in the future, sir. Take care.
Take it easy, Tony.
All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.